Now, there are a few things I'd like to discuss, and the topic is boundaries, and which for this lesson I have decided to split into two sections. Our first video is going to explore boundaries with one-to-one clients, and then our second video is going to focus on boundaries with couples, which is a more difficult concept to implement. So let's start with the kind of boundaries you should have with one-to-one clients when it comes to coaching them on their relationships. Now, when you are working with people on their relationships, or when you're working with clients on their relationships, I highly encourage you to think of a few different issues that you may face in your coaching career. Now, the first one I'd like to explore with you is what happens when your clients projects onto you and develop some feelings for you. So in other words, you will be working with people on their relationship, which means they will open up to you about some very sensitive topics. And what tends to happen is a client, or as a human being, we confide in someone else about our most sensitive issues or our vulnerabilities, or our insecurities, and we are just being heard. We're being listened to with respect. We're being understood. And what's going to happen is going to naturally trigger a sense of being appreciated or deeply understood, as well as deeply seen. And ultimately, as human beings, this is what we're looking for in a relationship. We're looking for someone to see the depths of who we are and to accept and love us for who we are. So in coaching, we tell a coach about our most sensitive traits, some personalities, and some different emotions we feel, and they offer us unconditional positive regard. Now, the thing is that it is completely normal for an individual to begin to have feelings for a coach. And that's what I mean by projecting, because deep down, if your client does start to develop feelings for you, then it's a form of projecting on their behalf. It's not necessarily because of you, and it's not that they fall in love with you. They fall in love with what you give them. The image that they project onto you is one of someone who accepts them as they are and listens to them with an understanding and unconditional positive regard. So they project onto you the image of someone who just completely accepts them. However, what they are failing to see is that in that moment, it's not that you're not there as another human being, so to speak. You are there as someone completely objective and neutral. So it's just much easier to offer unconditional positive regard and acceptance and care and understand when our own issues are triggered. Now, clients just may not be aware of this or recognize it consciously, so they may simply just develop some feelings for you. So how do you deal with this? Now, the first thing that you need to do is just recognize that they are projecting onto you. And due to the fact that they are unfamiliar with you, they're fantasizing about you. And the only part of you that they know is the part of you that gives them what they need and what they've always wanted since the beginning of their lives. It's unconditional love, unconditional positive regard. So please do not misunderstand what I mean by love. I am not referring to the romantic love, but listening to understand without judging or criticism or criticizing them. Someone who is just simply holding space for them to be who they are is considered unconditional love. Now, you should just always keep this in mind. If you begin to notice that your client is developing feelings for you over time, remember that they are just most likely projecting onto you the image of their ideal partner, which is distorted because it's not real life, but it's not a real life situation in which that's taking place. So how do you deal with this? Once you remember and recognize that it's just simply a projection, you may name it. Nevertheless, if you just have the courage to share with your clients that perhaps they've changed towards you, or that they're developing some behaviors, or maybe even that some things are making you start to feel that perhaps the relationship is changing into something else, you can let them know if you choose to do so. But it does take a lot of vulnerability on your part. So this is just it's going to be a very vulnerable position to be in, because as I said, you just don't know what your client is going to respond to, which means it takes a lot of vulnerability on your part. And in some cases, they may be very open to what you have to say, and they may completely understand, what you are saying. And at that point, you might be able to just discuss it with them. However, if they feel insecure, or if you are tapping them, it's possible that if you press one of those buttons on one of their wounds, that they might react strongly. So as a coach, you just never know what response you're going to get from your clients when you take the risk to open up about how you feel or how you perceive them in this way. So if they become defensive, you just need to be able to ground yourself. so that you can receive that defensiveness without becoming defensive in return. Maybe you can mention some of the behaviors that you've noticed that may, this may help back up what you are saying to support your point of view. For example, you just might say, well, there is some sense of flirting going on, and I'm starting to get an impression that, I'm starting to sense flirting going on during the session. So I just wanted to bring it up in order to get your view of it. That might be one way that you can discuss what you perceive. And if they say, I don't understand what you're talking about, and you are just completely misreading the situation in that moment, it's just very important for you as a coach to just not take it personally and to just respond with humility and just simply say, okay, well, thank you very much for clarifying that for me. It was just a doubt that I had, and I just wanted to clear the air, or maybe I just wanted to name it, so there would be no more misunderstandings between us in the future. Simple, right? We think. even if deep down you are just quite convinced that something is going on, if they are just defensive, the mere act of just naming it just might help them reflect on it, and they may even bring it up themselves in another session when the opportunity arises. Now, I would say that this is the most hardcore way of dealing with feelings that are arising for you that are not the same as the feelings that you are experiencing. And it just may also be possible to do something that might be a little bit softer in terms of your approach, such as just simply noting it without naming it. If you notice that the rapport between you and your client is just really good, and that you are just starting, to share a little bit of your point of view about your life with them, then you can gently and softly reinforce the boundaries. So if you notice that the rapport is, again, just really good, then you can reinforce the boundaries gently and softly. And if you are just sharing a little bit of your thoughts and your feelings about things, you might want to take a step back and reset the boundaries. There are many times when human feelings do incline and are developed, and as a result of being so satisfied with the report, that it just becomes such a natural conversation that we are just able to let our guard down just a little bit because we are enjoying it so much. And when we let down our guard as coaches, we are able to just be a lot more friendly and a lot less formal, which is a very good thing because it just reinforces the sense of trust that we have with our clients and reinforces the sense of connection that we have with them, which again, like I said, that is a good thing unless it can be misinterpreted. So I would recommend, again, taking a step back and going back into being a bit more professional. If you notice that your clients are perhaps starting to develop feelings for you, or you notice that they are becoming more flirty, or you notice just something else, then I would suggest going back into the beginning a bit more and just being a little bit more professional. Now, you might mention perhaps that it's a coaching setting and that the things that you're sharing with them or how they perceive you are obviously artificial, because this is not a real life situation in the sense that it's not a real relationship. So it may just help if you just remind them that you are a coach and understand they can't see the human side of you that they will be facing if they were in a relationship with you, so to speak. So in order to avoid defensiveness as well as not causing a break in a narrative, it is of course just extremely important to do all this extremely subtle. Now there is a reality that we discussed at the beginning of the lesson, which is that it's a projection and not a reality, since they really don't know you. And the person that they see as the only part of you that is viewed from that perspective, it's not the relationship. They think that it's perfect for them, but it's really not. Now, this can be very well, it can be one of the first challenges that you may face. There just may be situations where you have to deal with boundaries, and these are just some ideas that just may help you deal with them. However, it's just important to just note that this is not a complete list, guys, by any means necessary. So I ask you to just reflect in your own time as to how you would handle this situation. Perhaps it would be a good idea to have a discussion with other coaches or mentors about what their view would be on this. And if so, if they have experienced any kind of similar situation before, and if so, how did they handle them? This is just definitely something that just needs to be kept in mind for future sessions. So this is just going to be the first boundary issue in one-on-one relationship coaching that I would like to talk about. The second thing you might find with your clients, and as I mentioned in an earlier lesson, the issue that I'm talking about is contact outside of appointments. So what I would suggest is that you need to decide and think ahead of time. What's your policy in terms of keeping in touch via text, email, or even phone calls outside of sessions? Is this something that you are going to offer as part of a package to your clients? Would you consider this to be something that you're going to offer, or that you do not offer as part of a coaching service? Some beginner coaches offer packages that include, let's say, for example, a set of 5 lessons, as well as unlimited emails and phone calls and texts. Listen, I would just be very cautious with using the word unlimited. But you may be able to say you are allowed 3 emails per week or 3 calls per week. I think, it's just very important to just have a specific number or a very specific structure. Number one, I'm not sure who has all that time to have unlimited anything. I have a busy life, and I'm sure you may have one as well. So when it comes to a time frame, if you choose to just offer a package, offer contact outside of your sessions, now guys, it's just likely that your clients, if they have boundary or if their boundaries are just blurry, they are not going to understand that it's not appropriate to contact you outside of your contact hours. It's going to be harder to deal with this when it arises. And I would just say, rather than waiting for the issue to arise, I would just establish it right from the beginning with some clear ground rules. Therefore, if you are offering a package that includes, outside of session contact, please ensure that you are just very clear and specific regarding when, how, and how many of those contacts are included in your package, and how many of those contacts are a part of the package. And in the event that you do not offer this as a part of a package, then it just may be important to just point out that it's not encouraged for them to contact you outside of sessions. Now, one way that you can approach this is you can do it right from the beginning. When you are signing a contract with your clients, by contracting, I mean setting up a verbal agreement between 2 parties in the process of contracting is going to be the first step. You need to come to a verbal agreement with the other party. Discuss what you're going to work on in your journey together, what the outcome of the sessions will be, as well as what your client is expecting as a result of the sessions. Now, you can also let your client know what they can expect from you as a coach. This is when you can mention the no contact outside of sessions unless an emergency occurs, which they should be calling 911 if that is the case. But this is, again, this is where you can mention what commitments that they can expect from you and what commitments you can expect from your client as a coach. Now, one of the easiest ways to breach the boundary topic is just to put it into your contract, but you can also write it on a piece of paper and include it in a contract if that's what you would like to do. But I would just suggest doing this before you even start the journey with your client. So in case your client starts contacting you more often outside of working hours, you just might consider gently referring them to your original contracting. And it's equally important to just explain to your clients why it's not advisable for them to contact you outside of your business hours and why they are not encouraged to do so. Now, one of the main reasons is dependency. You do not want your clients to become dependent on you, because our role as coaches, according to my experience and a lot of other coaches' experience, is we are here to empower our clients and reinforce their sense of independence as a result of working with us. And by relying on you too much and contacting you outside of sessions, they are somehow giving away their power to you, which goes against what we want to achieve for them in the first place, which is to empower them. Now, another reason why we should not have contact outside of sessions is because, and I would say this would be more in a text message way. Text messages or emails, these things are just very misleading. And as it's just very easy to create misunderstandings through written communication due to the fact that we just lack a lot of information. A lack of tone is an insufficient way to just convey the message. So these deficiencies could just easily lead to misinterpretations and misunderstandings when written communication is used. This is just especially true if there are some insecurities on the part of your client. So I would just suggest not to use text messages or emails to correspond. Now, in my opinion, again, it's just much better to just have a voice-to-voice communication so that you can explain this to your clients when you ask them not to contact you outside of appointments unless it's an emergency. Now, another topic that I would like to go over in regards to one-on-one session and some other things that you need to just take into consideration. This issue isn't necessarily yours, but rather it's about your client's life and boundaries, and this is their partner. So in other words, if you have a client who, let's say, comes to see you and, to discuss their relationship, you are going to need to remind them that ultimately they're going to end up talking about their partner. who is a third party outside of the room who is not choosing to do this work with them. And it is just very common for your clients to come to the sessions expressing a desire for their partner to be different. Now, your role in this situation is to remind them that they really have no control over what their partner does and how their partner behaves. And that your role is just to remind them that they are actually not in charge of what their partner does. The purpose of the coaching session is to help your client to define very clearly what they feel and what they are looking for and what they need and what their boundaries are. However, they can influence their partner. They are able to influence their partner in a positive way. Now, there might be some work that you need to do in order to encourage or assist your client to just accept that their sphere of influence is just relatively limited to themselves, which will require some effort on your part. So in this case, they will need, they will not be able to change their partner. There might be some, better ways for them to communicate with their partner. But in the end, they just have to accept that they are only responsible for their own situation, their own feelings, and their own actions and their own behaviors. Now, there are boundaries between them and their partner, and they cannot influence their partner or change them in any way. Now, my reason for mentioning this is because I have seen many, many times in a lot of my coaching sessions where I have had clients where, I would have to stop a session with the client and ask them, what is going well for them? Could you tell me what you wanted to change? I would like to know what your outcome is. And the majority of the clients will respond by saying, well, I want my partner to be different from the rest of them. Basically, what I want is for my partner to pay me more attention. It would be, nice if my partner was more involved with our children. Clarify right from the beginning and help them understand that this is not going to happen. You can suggest better communication methods, as I mentioned earlier, but at the end of the day, it's about dealing with your clients and helping them accept what their partner is doing and whether it's acceptable or not. I would encourage you to just take some time to reflect on this. Right now, what would you tell your client about this in the best possible way? What would you recommend that your client do in order to help them without lecturing or instructing them on how to do something? You can use questions to help them understand how they can help themselves to accept and recognize that they do not have any control over their partner and that they are involved with. Now, I would like to conclude with one more topic, guys, on boundaries. I know it's a lot. I'm sorry. I just want you guys to get all of this information. So I want to conclude with one more topic on boundaries that I want to touch on in this lesson. And this topic revolves around what happens when your client chooses to do work on themselves with you, but their partner does not. And this is more about boundaries within their lives than boundaries between you and your client. But it is worth noting because a lot of the times people decide to do, when they do some personal, development and they start to resolve their own issues or learn more about themselves, if their partner for some reason doesn't do the same, the relationship just might start to suffer. And usually it'll be, it's going to come up spontaneously through the course of the work that you're doing with your client. Or you just might have to bring it up at some point in the process, because I just believe it's important for people to recognize that when they embark on a self-development journey, they will go through a transformational process. There is a possibility that it's going to change the way they look at things. So it will change how they feel about themselves. It's going to change how they feel about their partner. It will change how they react. It's going to change their behaviors. So they will be able to just put more healthy boundaries in place. And all of this is going to disrupt the existing dynamic in their relationship. Now, of course, this is referring to clients who are already in a long-standing relationship. And because there have already been established boundaries within that relationship, and since they've had this dynamic between them and their partner for quite a long time, they're starting to work on themselves. It's going to naturally cause a shift in the dynamic between them and their partner. So in most cases, what tends to happen is that the partner was not working on themselves, and they're not going to be pleased about the change. Now again, there's some expectations. Not every partner is not, it's not going to be unhappy or happy about you making changes. But the main thing is that as human beings, we are not really fond of change. And when we are in a relationship of any type with another person, We prefer familiarity and the security of knowing how the dynamics will play out. It is the little dynamics of the little games that I want to go ahead and mention. And perhaps we will just talk about, this later, is the way in which we relate to each other. But when I mention games, I just mean how we relate to each other on a daily basis. So as human beings, we just have a natural tendency to want family charity in our lives. And this is just related to some deep observational issues surrounding our dislike of new things and experiences in our relationship with other people. So we're just always looking for that familiarity because we don't like uncertainty. And so unconsciously, we're just always looking for it. So if one of the dynamics in a relationship starts to change, it will surely disrupt the other partner, especially if the other partner does not work on themselves. They just may not be aware of this awareness when they become unsettled, and their unconscious reaction is just likely to be that we are just trying to bring back the old ways. So they're going to push your client's buttons, and they will just challenge your client to do the same thing. They're going to want to bring them back in line with their old ways of dealing with them so that they will just behave in the same manner as they used to. Therefore, it's just worthwhile to make your client aware of this and just to prepare them for how to handle those buttons pushings if that's the case. But those do happen. That's just a more extreme situation. Now, it is also possible for a relationship to just endure changes in one individual because the partner just may have such a resistant attitude to change that there just may be many conflicts that may arise. Now, your client just needs to be aware of the possibilities that this might happen, and they need to think ahead of time of how they can manage that situation. It's not an absolute necessity, but it is something that I'm mentioning because I have seen it in many of my coaching sessions with my clients, and I would just like you as a coach to be aware of it because it is a thing that will come up at some point in your career. And maybe you just may want to wait until your client has to go through this and then bring it up then and there. But I would just like you to just be aware of the fact that this is something that you should be aware of. And in your own opinion, how would you explain all of this to your client? Or perhaps you already have a few clients who sees their relationships are changing and they are just being challenged by the work that they're doing on themselves. And what do you think of, what would you think would be the best way to address this challenge for them? I think this is just an example of a boundary issue that we often encounter in relationship coaching, whether it's between our clients and us or between our clients and their partners. And as I mentioned before, this is just not an all-inclusive list, since there is just always different situations and challenges that needs to be overcome and things that need to be added to it. Now, there is just no one-size-fits-all solution because every client has their own. But I just would like you to just simply be aware of these issues, and maybe you should just think by looking around you, looking at all the boundary issues that may arise between you and your client and between your client and their partners as your clients are just doing some self-development work. And I would just encourage you to just reflect on how you, if this is a matter of boundaries between you and them, how would you like to approach them in such a way as to maintain respect and a relationship that is positive and unconditional? Now, that is the end. I have finally come to the end of this lesson with one-to-one clients. So guys, please join me on the next lesson where we're going to cover boundaries between couples, followed by coaching single people. See you all later. Bye-bye.